If you're passing by the canton of Zug, you might not think twice about this 18-apartment building block in Bar. But in fact, it's the first property in Switzerland to be sold to investors using blockchain. In March, a fifth of the property was tokenized and then sold to 4 investors for about 3 million Swiss francs. So will this open the doors to more real estate transactions on the blockchain? Joining me here in the studio is Bastiaan Don, who's actually the founder of blockimmo, the real estate platform behind this recent deal. When we talk about tokenizing a building using blockchain, what does that really mean to the everyday individual?
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and I think tokenization is a keyword which sounds really complicated. So to put it very simple, thanks to this technology, you can fractionalize an asset like a building, and that means you just divide it into very small pieces. And a token is, in the end, is nothing like a shell, and you can put anything in that shell and use it for an easier way of transfer. So if you look at this property, for example, we created 1 million tokens, and we took the property value, and then based on the value, we can define how much a token is.
So put very simply, it's like saying that the building itself was a company and people were just buying shares within that.
Yeah, as long as the token is not legally defined in Switzerland or in any jurisdiction, like I said before, it's just a shell. So you have to put an existing financial instrument, like a company, in front of it, and then you can use it for tokenization.
So in Switzerland, if you've got your eye on a chalet or a nice building that you've seen and you want to get a piece of that, how would you go about getting a token?
Right. Coming to the private market, I think this is maybe a little bit too early right now, but just imagine a little bit further down the road, when the land register is on the blockchain, then you could think at really exciting concepts. For example, the chalet you mentioned. Usually the bank finances up to 60–70% of that building. Just imagine you can suddenly tokenize the remaining 30% and get liquidity out of that. That's just one example of how this could work.
Can you walk me through the differences in terms of a traditional real estate transaction where someone would go face-to-face with a real estate agent and something that's a transaction that's taken place just using blockchain?
Right, so if you look at the traditional real estate market, it's highly illiquid. So what does that mean? It's an asset that once you buy it, it's hard to sell it again. And the first step is already buying it. There are a lot of middlemen involved because it's also a complicated matter. So you need probably advisors, lawyers, and an agent. And then the whole transaction also requires time. You need to do proper due diligence, so you need a lot of documents about this property. And in the end, a lot of value from the property going to the seller, going to the buyer, is lost or redirected to these intermediaries, making sure that the process works, right? So fast forward to blockchain, you can make all of this a lot easier, meaning that you're less reliant on middlemen, and the transaction can take place completely on-chain against very low transaction costs.
Speaking of middlemen, blockchain in real estate, that has the potential to cut out intermediaries. So who do you think would be at threat?
Right, so it's exactly like you said. In theory and in a lot of white papers you read, blockchain is going to solve the world and cut out middlemen. I think in the first step, it would be highly advisable to involve these middlemen, even in this new economy powered by blockchain technology.
And can you give me an idea of the middlemen you're referring to?
Yes, so let's take a real estate agent, for example. Right now, they have a one-time fee per transaction, so they don't have a recurring business. What if they start using a product like blockimmo and we remove all their pain points? For example, usually their fee is paid after the transaction. With us, that would be completely automated. Also, another pain point is due diligence documents, right? Usually they're all over the place. You have to send emails with PDFs and Excel tables.
So what if someone is actually watching right now and they're working for one of the big Swiss real estate agents, And they're thinking, wow, the status quo actually still works for me. I don't need to change up my business model and invest into new technology. What would you have to say to that?
I would highly advise them to at least start exploring the area. And the few examples I just gave before are just to get started, right? We have a solution for them where they can turn their business into a recurring revenue-generating business, which is completely new for a real estate agent. And again, I would advise them just start exploring what's blockchain, what's real estate and blockchain. Come talk to us, talk to other players that actually build products, and that would be a good first step.
Do you think that traditional players in the real estate industry in Switzerland are innovative enough and embracing new technologies?
I think in general in Switzerland, but any Western country, real estate is really slow moving. And they also are in no need to adapt, right? The rent income is there, the money is generating, the properties are generating money. So why should I change? But that's always a risk position as well, because it can go really fast, as we just demonstrated with the first step.
Let's talk about the property that was recently sold in Bar in Canton Zug. Now, I'm curious to know, was that an idea that was proposed to the owners, and what was their reaction when they first heard about that, selling part of their property on the blockchain?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So, as an example, these people behind the building, they are convinced that blockchain will cause, you can call it a revolution in real estate.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that they're living in Zug, in Crypto Valley?
It definitely helps, yeah. So obviously there was convincing involved and building trust. And once that was established, it was a great partnership between the three companies, so Alea Labs and Swiss Crypto Token. And again, for the owner, it's just a new model for getting liquidity. So it's without going to any banks, he suddenly has some liquidity without losing the ownership of the property. So it's a new financing model.
Let's talk about Switzerland, because we've seen here that there really has been a race to see who can tokenize the first property, and somehow you've managed to do it. So how did you navigate the regulatory framework where others have stumbled before?
Yeah. I think in 2018, we focused on two things. So one, building an actual product with blockchain technology, and two, making sure it's regulatory compliant. So what does that mean? We were very lucky to engage with Marcel, who is a lawyer at MME, and he has a financial market background. And that's the key element, right? In the end, blockchain is just a technology. You need to understand the market you're in order to do something within the existing laws and regulations.
I'm sure that these other companies also approached lawyers and had legal expertise as well.
I tend to disagree, but again, you need to have a person that really understands the financial market. And what we did is that we showed the financial regulators which laws and regulations already are to be applied or not relevant in order to tokenize real estate. So this whole process, it always sounds easy, right? It took us 6 months, maybe 3 months of preparations, day and night work. So it was a really tough and long process. And in the end, with a satisfying result.
Can we expect to see more tokenizations of a bigger size?
Definitely. I think you always have to start with certain steps, right? So this was an ideal first step for us. Not too big, not too small. And we've proven that the technology works in a traceable way. A next step is to open up the investor pool. And obviously, I'm looking at a little bit larger deals. But again, introducing such a new technology, you need to take steps in a controlled way. And that's exactly what we're doing.
And we're talking maybe about, corporate buildings or bigger venues, not just a residential building block in Zug.
Exactly. After the first transaction, there's tremendous interest. And we've been looking at all kinds of buildings, the ones you mentioned, hotels. So yeah, just stay tuned. And
can you give some names actually already?
I think that's too early. So I like to do it the Swiss way, which is in German, tu Gutes und sprich darüber. So first we actually do something and then we talk about it.
The property in Zug, it was sold to 4 investors for about 3 million Swiss francs. They probably did this because they thought it was a good investment. But what if next week or a month later, they wake up and decide, look, actually, I kind of regret my decision. What kind of avenues do they have to trade or sell their tokens?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question again. So that comes back to what you also hear a lot, right? So illiquid asset, tokenization, make something liquid because you tokenize it. So what does that actually mean? The tokens we create, they are tradable on secondary marketplaces.
But the market infrastructure for that is still in its infancy.
Correct. And that's exactly why we started a second project last August, which is called STX, Security Token Exchange. And on these kind of regulated marketplaces or exchanges, if you like, these kind of tokens can be traded in a fully, let's say, modern way. The cool thing is that in Switzerland, you're allowed to enable under your own brand. So for example, blockimmo, which is not a bank and not a security dealer, you're allowed to do trading, which is called like peer-to-peer or bulletin board style. So we already enabled this for our investors. We already have this live, we have it built. So the trading is already available. In a second stage, we will list these kind of security tokens at regulated exchanges.
Do you think that the digital assets trading platform that SIX has announced coming out in the second half of this year is going to in any way change that?
There are many players working on these kind of security token exchanges or digital asset exchanges. In the case of SIX, from my knowledge, they are, as they are doing now, their customers are banks. And also, in my opinion, they're using a private blockchain, which is actually a non-existent word. So I'm not sure how's that going to work or how that is different from the current stock exchange. I know for a fact that there are many other projects working on public blockchains, enabling these kind of exchanges, like our own project. And in the end, again, it's not going to be the winner takes it all. There might be different exchanges for a certain type of asset, and it's going to be definitely exciting to see what comes out first.
I want to finish up just by taking a look at a question. For many people watching, they might think, okay, this tokenization of real estate is maybe something I would consider as a homeowner or looking to buy. But over the long term, as tokenization gets more steam, I guess, how will this impact housing prices for us?
I think that's something in the recent past that hasn't happened before, right? So again, you take a liquid asset and you make it liquid. That automatically means it's tradable and there will be price fluctuations. Our assumption is that the property is there, and so you have a reference value. On the secondary market, the price of the token representing this property might, it moves around the building value. So to give you a clear example, let's say you invest 5,000 Swiss francs today in a property, and then 3 years down the road, your financial situation changes. The property is still there. It might have increased a certain value, and again, but your financial situation changes. So you're in need of some liquidity. You go on this regulated exchange, and you sell your tokens, maybe for 5,500, right? So you put the sell-over in, maybe nobody's buying at that moment, and you're in urgent need of liquidity. So you might even go a little bit lower in order to get your money. So in the end, it's just like the stock market, it's just like how any market works, it's supply and demand. And
just like the stock market is also very volatile, and I'm just wondering, isn't that also going to put people on their toes and make them a bit nervous about getting into buying a token in real estate? Yeah, I think it's definitely something to consider. And in the end, it's your money you're investing, right? So there's always a risk, and you have to make sure you understand what you're investing in. And then it's up to you if you're willing to take that risk. And we do nothing than enable you to at least get out in an easy fashion. Well, Mr. Don, it's still the first step, so we'll have to see how this develops in the future. So thank you very much. Thank you.